Pranam Acharya ji. First of all, thanks for taking out your time for this discussion. Because this is something that I actually wanted to ask a lot of questions on. Just because when such events happen in the society and they come into the limelight, the sequence of events is usually so fast that it becomes very difficult to really look at what is really happening there. What I'm talking of is the recent things that were in the news. When almost, I guess, 10 days back, the nation somehow woke up from its sleep when a case happened in Hyderabad near a toll plaza. A woman was brutally raped and murdered. It came in the public purview, and after that, people started asking for justice in their own ways. Somebody asked for lynching, somebody asked for hanging them, somebody asked for several other kind of brutal ways. But somehow when I tried finding things on my own, I came to know that it's not as if it was just one incident. Rape is something which is happening at a rate of 90 cases a day. And when I'm saying 90 cases a day, these are the ones which are reported. There is going to be a huge number of cases which are not reported even. So this is something which is happening maybe even right now when we are talking. When the last time when I was sitting in front of you, I got the opportunity to ask a few questions. We were discussing climate change. And when a discussion is on that, then it is fair but clear to people that somehow it is caused by us. It is somehow something where we need to take some measures, we need to spread some awareness and do this and that, and people do a lot of things. But when I look at the news headlines, when I look at the news report at 9 p.m. daily, I find that rape is considered to be something as very individualistic, as if it is something which is done by an individual and which can be solved by just punishing the individual, and that's all. But when such cases happen again and again, even after stricter laws are passed, when such cases are happening even in those countries where laws are far more stricter than India, and even if they are not reported, we all know how these things go on in the periphery of the society and in the closed rooms. So the one thing that I really wanted to ask, not as any expert in the field of criminology, anthropology, or psychology, but just as a common man, was that what exactly is the cause behind this? And parallelly, what is the role of these pillars of our civilization? The society, the education, the entire entertainment industry, and parallelly, when such acts happen, how they are taken into account via the rule of law, the justice and everything. So I wanted a total view of this, a holistic view of this entire cause and this entire crime, if you may say this, which is happening at very rampant scale. What is behind this?
It depends on the depth to which you want to take your inquiry. If you want to keep things superficial, then the fellow who committed the act is the one behind the act. You could say just that much and close the file. You could convince and console yourself that the problem has been explained, and the culprits have been nabbed and punished. And it's not that you would be wrong. It's just that such an approach would not take you very far in the direction of really solving the problem. Unfortunately, that's the approach most people want to take. It seems to be the easiest and the most hassle-free approach. A crime takes place, name the individuals, hunt for them, and punish them. This is the most superficial and hence the least effective way of looking at the problem or solving the problem. One level higher than these are the people whose approach is to blame it on the system. They say, yes, people are to be blamed, but people are driven by the system. People themselves are victims of the system. So let's change the system. They would say we need police reforms, we need judicial reforms, we need better civil infrastructure. One of the highest authorities of our country has very recently talked of reforming the judiciary and how the long delay in resolving such cases, disposing of such cases, leads to widespread frustration with the judiciary, and then people are forced to take things in their own hands and deliver instant justice in their own crude ways. So that's an approach that looks at the system to fix the problem. And then there is a third level, higher than the level of these two, that talks of culture. So people who take this approach, this level, they talk of social attitudes, they talk of prevalent misogyny, they talk of patriarchy, they even talk of economic disparities. They would go into historical reasons, social reasons, cultural reasons, and they say that until and unless there is a social transformation, things cannot improve. The people who take the second approach are obviously trying to go deeper than the people who say that individuals by themselves are responsible, and hence tackling and punishing those individuals is the way out. Then the people who take the socio-cultural and historical approach are probably trying to dig even deeper into the issue, and they are saying that just changing the systems won't help. The entire social mindset has to change. So depending on the depth that you want to take, this whole matter of crime and retribution opens up in a different way. Each of these three approaches is valid. It's just that the outcomes will be hugely suboptimal. If you take the first approach, they would be slightly better if you take the second one. They might be even better if you go for the third one. So these are the three types of responses we are currently seeing in the country and the entire world. You talked of a figure, you said every day 90 cases of sexual assault are being reported in India. If we extend the coverage to the entire world, the data would probably move to many hundreds. And as you said, these are just the reported cases. We do not know of the actual extent of the happening. Moreover, you have just talked of sexual assault cases. If we look at the overall scope of all kinds of criminal activity, then the number would simply shoot into multiple thousands. And be it any kind of criminal activity, very broadly, these are the three approaches that we take. Blame the individual, or blame the system, or blame the society and its culture. Those who blame the system have more patience and more insight than the ones who blame merely the persons. So those who blame the system, they will ask for legislative reform and such things. Those who blame culture have even deeper insight and more patience than either of the two other categories, and they will say we need to look at the way norms operate in this society. What are the mores? What are the prevailing values? I suppose these people, with their approach, are the nearest to solving the problem compared to the other two. But I would want to talk of a fourth approach. Why do I need a fourth approach, first of all? I need a fourth approach because when you blame the offender, when you blame the system or the society, I feel you are conveniently avoiding looking at yourself. One wants to say, in each of these three approaches, that somebody else is to be blamed. In each of these three approaches, there is the benefit of victimization that one is drawing. The finger is pointing towards somebody else. He committed the theft, he is the murderer, he is the rapist. It's very easy to point at somebody else. Obviously, I am not to be looked at. Don't even talk of who I am and how I am. That fellow out there, he is the culprit. Punish him, hang him, lynch him, whatever. Or the system is to be blamed. What do we do? The entire country is like this. What do we do? The country is to be blamed. There are so few jobs, the economy is not doing very well. The education system is broken. Courts are corrupt. Justice is delivered at snail's pace. What do we do? Do you see how helpless we pretend to be and how clean we want to show ourselves as? I didn't do anything. I had to take matters in my hand because it's the judge who is lousy. I'm a victim. Either I have nothing to do with the case as far as culpability is concerned, or at most, if I indeed do have a relationship with the case, it is that I too am a victim in the case. Even at the third level, when you are saying that it is our culture and our flawed values and mental stuff that we got in heritage that is responsible, even then, aren't you just very cleanly and innocently and deceptively presenting yourself as a passive victim? So these are the three approaches that people have been taking, and I obviously agree that the second is better than the first, and the third is an even better approach. But there is something that these three approaches have in common, and that is
Look at the other.
somebody else is to be blamed. Somebody else is to be blamed. These three approaches differ in identifying who that somebody else is. But in saying that it is somebody else who is to be blamed, these three approaches are all in consensus. They all agree. Hence, a fourth approach is needed. That's why I'm talking of the fourth approach.
Even I would like to add something to this. I guess we have already exhausted the first three approaches. We have tried everything. When it comes to the policing system, recently there was a Romeo squad to really look out for cases like these. And when it comes to the judicial reforms, we are already asking for the capital punishment. So I guess when it comes to the system or the individual or the cultural reforms, we have already tried our best. So in some sense, as you mentioned, we are helpless in this case.
No, there would always be scope, either real or ideal. You can never say that policing is perfect. So the next time a crime happens, you can again go back and say, the police is lousy. And as far as our country goes, you cannot even say that policing or the judiciary are anywhere close to perfect. So nobody is going to ever feel that the first three approaches are exhausted. If nothing else, then the option to rely on the third approach would always remain. You see, you can say that now I am keeping a check on the individual. That's in your hands. You can say that now I have reformed my public policy, my police system, my judicial system, my education system and such things. But how will you ever say that now I have reformed my history? You cannot change that, right? So if you have nobody else left to blame, if you have reached a saturation point in blaming, then still there is one easy culprit always available to be blamed, and that is your history and culture and values. You could say everything else is all right. But we Indians, we are such misogynist people, and it's there in the old books, and it's there in the histories, it's there in the fables, and somebody might even say it's there in our blood. How would you change that? So that option to blame somebody else is always going to remain open, always. Even in the developed world, there is no place that is able to say that our law and order mechanism is anywhere close to perfect. Gory incidents happen there as well. And then there is a lot of outrage on how the police is performing and how the entire civic infrastructure is performing. This option is never going to close. The option to point a finger at the other. It is never going to close because the closure of this option would imply an honest self-inquiry. And that is a very difficult thing to do. That's a terrible thing to do for most people. So it would remain a compulsive tendency to keep blaming the other. Somebody else is responsible. Somebody else is responsible. And to punish the other is to absolve oneself of the responsibility. Do you see now why we very quickly start baying for blood? Just please kill someone, anyone. Kill anyone. So that we feel relieved in our consciences. Something terrible happened. And that which happened is an undeniable proof that something is terribly wrong. I cannot deny that proof. It's just too much in my face. Can't sweep it under the carpet. Usually, we succeed in sweeping most issues under the carpet. We pretend as if things are all right. But when something so very ghastly happens, it's all over the headlines. It becomes impossible to just close your eyes to it and turn away from it. And you don't want to take the responsibility upon yourself. So then what is the only option you have? Punish somebody so that you can tell yourself and console yourself that the fault has been corrected, that revenge has been taken, and that things have been set right. If you do not tell yourself that things have been set right, you will be forced to face the mirror. You will be obligated to inquire into yourself that you don't want to do. So the easiest thing is to blame a person, the system, or the entire society, punish someone, be done with it, and then carry on with your usual dirty life from which all kinds of crime germinates. I know I have made a rather strong statement, but I would stand by it, and as we discuss, we'll see what I want to say.
So basically, as much I am seeing right now, that whatever solutions or ways of correcting ourselves are being put forth in the limelight, they are all in this dimension of that 1, 2, and 3. I see that circular was issued by Hyderabad police. They had, given some ways of the way women should conduct themselves in the society. And as a response to that, many women activists usually say that, why are we always educating the women? We should also talk about the men to how to educate themselves. But at the same time, if we really want some instant results, if we really want to see that some solution must happen, must come, and as early as possible, is there any scope of that in the first 3 approaches?
The first 3 approaches would give you exactly that. Instant results. But those instant results would be a global sub-optimum. They would optimize what you want in a very local area. When I say area, I don't mean a geographical area. For example, you could contain probably the number of rape cases by having all women stay compulsorily indoors. Or cover their faces and their entire bodies. Or you could have a situation like some of the countries in the Middle East where you say that the criminal would be publicly flogged, or his hands would be chopped off, or his head would roll on the public square. You could do all those things, and it's possible that the number of rape cases in isolation may dwindle. And you might feel that such a policy has worked. But as I said, this would just be a local optimum. Globally, in the sense of all human activity, it would be a disaster. Almost like air conditioning. That machine works at close to 40% efficiency, I suppose. So it cools down a room, but then heats up the atmosphere. And the cooling effect it brings is only 40% of the energy that it burns. So much more heating takes place than cooling when you look at the complete picture, when you look at the bigger picture. See, if you take an air conditioner and you keep it inside a closed room, what would happen? Switch it on. Keep an air conditioner, keep it inside a closed room and switch it on. What do you think would happen? The room will get heated up. That's the complete effect of the air conditioner. But we never know that. Why? Because we keep the thing half in and half out. Are you getting it? So if you make laws like that, then the half in would have appeared cooled down. The number of rape cases would cool down. But overall mischief would increase. That's the problem with the first three approaches. They try to tackle the issue in a very limited and local way. And obviously, I repeat, when I say local, I do not mean geographically local. I mean mentally local.
So just when you were describing the entire situation, a few things came up to my mind. That even now there are strict laws against such kind of assaults. And I guess there is some correlation with the moment that case happened in Hyderabad. There was a report that the searches for that victim's name with the keyword rape on porn sites shooted up. Parallelly, I was also looking at one report regarding the box office collections. So there was one movie which was very much in vogue because of all such kind of behavior which was somehow promoted there visually, also received the highest collections in the industry. So are these three things, or three things that I just quoted, are a byproduct of the first three approaches that we have?
See, in fact, there is no need really to refer to one particular unfortunate victim again and again. It's the same story being tragically repeated in every such case. And the case need not even be of sexual assault. Crime is multifarious and diverse and happens in very unimaginable and subtle ways as well. So first of all, it is not about one particular victim. Secondly, it is not even about rape alone. It's about the overall context of crime. Yes, you have observed well that on the internet there are several videos that relate to sexual assaults, and they have not been uploaded so that people feel disgusted. They have been uploaded so that people may relish them. I would not be surprised if some of those videos are actually paid content. And I would not be surprised if people are actually paying up to go and watch videos in which a child is being molested, a woman is being assaulted, or somebody's head is being severed off. Can you imagine people paying money to watch this kind of stuff? So there is the fellow who commits the crime. And then there is this fellow who uploads a video and makes money from the crime. Not that uploading that video is a very important part or extension of the crime, but it gives us a very significant insight. Don't we all share these common vrittis, vasanas, tendencies? And we aren't linked to, and aren't we all linked to each other and constantly influencing each other? Can one person really exist in isolation and operate all alone? The fellow who watches child porn, is he really very different from a rapist? He's probably a bit cleverer, but not really different. He adopts a relatively safer route. He says, I'll please myself by watching the heinous act on the screen. I'll be careful to not dirty my own hands. I'll be careful to not to stick my own neck out and run the risk of getting caught. I'll do the thing in the safety and comfort of my living room, in front of my computer screen. But is he doing anything fundamentally different than the rapist? And the thing that you just mentioned, if it really happened, it tells us of who we are. And when I say we, I mean the individual person, including the masses who carried out, candlelight vigils and demonstrations and held up the placards and spoke aloud in legislative bodies and other places regarding the need to kill, lynch, and get instant revenge. That's how the common man is. If that's how the common man is, why are we so flabbergasted when criminals pop up in between? Is the common man himself not a supporter of crime, if not a criminal himself? You see, a criminal just doesn't suddenly drop from the sky. He is produced in an ecosystem. And when I say ecosystem, I am not talking of social values, right? Or culture or history of a place. I am talking of how we are deciding to be right now in our deliberate consciousness. How is it that we are deciding to be right now? Are our acts all happening in a stupor? I'm talking of the common man. Maybe he doesn't very frequently violate the written law, the explicit law. But does he not carry the desire to really get and enjoy much that is forbidden by the law? It would be a great mistake to treat a criminal as a marginal aberration. But that's what we want to do. We want to say, oh, these are fringe elements. Oh, they live on the borders of the society. Oh, they belong to the suburbs. Oh, they are not what the mainstream is. The mainstream is different. It is these fringe elements that are causing all the trouble. They are the others. They are the outsiders. They are not the outsiders. They are very much related to the very inside of the society. They are very much related to how each one of us is. The face of the criminal is just our own criminal face that we usually keep hidden. In the criminal, it's just that the face gets exposed. Then you have two ways. Either own up your mischief or disown it and say, no, that is not my face. I refuse to acknowledge it. I disown it. That is not mine. You take it away and hang it. Take that chap away and hang him. He is not me. We need to question that. Is that chap really not me? Then how do I extricate myself from the crime? By separating myself totally from him. I was saying the other day, nobody is born a criminal from the mother's womb. Think of what that fellow looks at. Think of what he reads. Think of what he sees on the internet. Think of the songs he hears. Think of the television serials he watches. Think of the movies he looks at. Who is producing that movie? Who is producing that movie?
The mainstream.
The mainstream is producing that movie, right? Was it you who showed that video to me yesterday? That criminal who has Anshu. So that video came to us yesterday. That criminal was there and very brazenly and actually happily he was declaring that he has already killed 6 people and he is going to kill a few more, and he has been caught. He has been caught, and the media just got the whiff and came to hold a mic in front of him. And policemen are surrounding him all around. In the middle of the policeman, just after being caught, very gladly he stands, declares that not only has he killed so many people, but he would actually kill a few more, and that he would break away from the jail in no time, and that on that day he was just aiming at the police inspector, and the police inspector was lucky that he got away with it, and the police inspector is probably standing by his side and grinning. And the fellow also says, I'm the hero of that Hindi movie. He names a particular movie. He says, I am the Khalnayak of Khalnayak. And he actually either sings a song or quotes a dialogue or something from that same movie. I don't know the extent to which that movie is responsible. Maybe that fellow is just trying to have a good time by naming that movie. Maybe he's just trying to bluff his way. Maybe he's just trying to entertain the media. People go bonkers when they have a mic in front of them. So maybe the same thing happened to that ruffian as well. Oh, he's much more than a ruffian. He's accused of multiple murders. But if that movie is coming to his mind at that moment, it won't really be too much to conclude that that movie indeed did have something to do with his consciousness. Who made that movie? He made that movie, his father made that movie. Somebody made that movie, right? That somebody is you and me. I repeat, nobody is born a criminal. Who turns a fellow into a criminal? You have to look at the entire society. You have to look at how we have chosen to be. And this is not the third approach that I am taking. I am talking of each particular individual. Nobody lives a totally secluded or isolated life. We all get influenced and influence each other. What is the kind of influence we cast on each other? How are our relationships? How do we deal with each other? What is it that we have taken as acceptable? What is it that the common man has taken as acceptable? Look at the way the politicians operate. They operate that way and we still admire them. In fact, sometimes probably we admire them for the ways in which they operate. The politician we very well know is a criminal, and yet we belong to his fan club. So who is it who is promoting crime then? Look at the parliament of the country. I suppose half the parliamentarians have criminal cases against them. Close to half. And they didn't muscle their way through to the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha or to the state assemblies. They were elected. Let that sink in. We are talking of crime here. Our own representatives to our highest legislative bodies are criminals, and they didn't barge their way into the parliament. We voted for them. We voted for crime. We voted for crime. If you vote for crime, then why do you act so stupefied when you see a crime happening on the road? We vote for crime, don't we? All right, you may say, no. The fellow who represents me in my area is not a criminal. He doesn't have a criminal case. Don't you know how much is spent in the election campaign? Don't you know where the funding comes from? In spite of knowing all that, you remain okay with it. Not only do you remain ostensibly okay with it, I would have been alright had we been just pretending to be okay with it. We are not even pretending to be okay with it. We are actually okay with it. It is not that we pretend to respect our parliamentarians and our ministers and our chief ministers, and many of us actually do respect them, knowing fully well who they are. Had it been just a pretense of respect under pressure, it could have been possible. But there is a huge section of society that is actually full of respect for so many of their role models, knowing fully well that their role models are criminals. Now, why are you surprised when somebody is robbed or raped or murdered? Look at this common urge, the common middle class urge to have a government job. You can contest me on this because I'll not have data. Nobody would come out and openly say that he wants to be a government officer because it offers big money. But don't you really know why in India there is such a mad rush after government jobs? And who is rushing after that plum job? The common man. The common man aspires to be a criminal. The common man aspires to be a criminal. A respectable criminal, albeit. A respectable criminal. I am a respectable government officer. We very well know what all that implies. And we are not talking of Sessions and Khairnars here. We are talking of 99.99999% of government officers. The common man himself takes pleasure in crime. It's just that he doesn't have the guts to commit larger crimes, which too he does the moment he gets a safe position. So there are those who are committing crimes, and then there are those who are waiting to commit crimes. There are those who are not committing crimes because they feel that it is not yet safe to commit a crime. They are waiting for their turn. They are waiting to gather more power. They are waiting to come to safe and powerful positions where then they can offend with impunity. Unless we see what we are doing in our own households, I suppose it would be largely hollow to wish for an end to this menace. We'll be obviously trying out many steps as we have been doing in the past. Some of those steps will achieve some results, but those results will be superficial and very temporal. The reality of our being, the reality of our life, will return in many, many ways again and again to haunt us.
When I was trying to just soak in what you just said regarding our aspiration for government jobs and the reason behind it, Now somehow it just struck me that now we are talking of people who prepare for these exams, who score good marks for these exams, who go through the biggest medicine as we think of against our crime is education. That somehow the ones who commit those crimes are the ones who are not educated, and somehow if we can bring them into the room, into the classroom, and things will solve. So basically we are trying to say that even when an individual goes through the entire journey of education that we have in different parts of the country or the world, even then that tendency to aspire to be a criminal stays in. So that makes me question the education system as well.
See, as long as crime remains limited to something that is proscribed by the law, if that is what your definition of crime is, you will not be able to stop crime. We usually feel that we have committed a crime only if we have violated the law. And if you can remain on the safe side, the right side of the law, you can declare yourself to be innocent in the eyes of the law. No, that is not how you can tackle crime. To tackle crime, you will need to have an internal locus. And that internal locus alone is your way to real innocence. If you don't have that internal locus, then you are existentially guilty, even if legally you are declared innocent. We talked of government jobs. There would be many government servants who would not be taking bribes, obviously. Their numbers too would be large. Technically, legally, they are all right. But then if one has an internal locus, one would ask himself, for the kind of salary I get, am I doing justice to my work? In the eyes of the law, you are a criminal only if, let's say, you take bribe. You need to have an internal locus where you don't need to measure yourself against the written law. Where you ask yourself, it's not sufficient to just not to take bribes. I must also have a certain vision in life. I must also be aligned to the work that I am doing. I must be able to really respect, even worship my work. And if I am not able to worship my work, really it is a crime. Even if technically it is not. That kind of thing is needed. Otherwise, you will be able to have limited solutions. You will be able to give yourself the satisfaction of having improved the situation or managed the situation. But you will never be ever able to fundamentally change the situation. If you want to manage crime, then take either of the first three approaches. We talked of them. But if you want to go beyond crime, then you will have to take the fourth approach. Mankind has already tried enough of 1, 2 and 3. Maybe it is time to bet on the fourth one. At least give it a try.
What is the fourth one?
We will have to raise the child differently. And to raise the child differently, we will need to be different. if you can change the actor, then obviously all the actions will change. Do you want to tackle crime, which is diverse and unending, of multiple shades and colors? Or would you rather tackle the criminal at the center? And when I say the criminal, I do not mean a person, I do not mean a body. I do not take that as the criminal. No body commits a crime. It is not your hand that commits the crime. It is not your kneecap that commits a crime. Crime we know of, right? The crime is an action. Who is the actor? Not your knee, not your nose. The actor is who you think you are, your identity. That's from where the crime proceeds. That has to be changed. Fathers have to change, mothers have to change. The kids will change. The kind of things people feed their kids, the kind of stuff people allow their kids to watch on television, the kind of movies that are allowed to become blockbusters, they have to be sharply looked at. We have had a spate of movies in the recent years where the protagonist is a de facto criminal. And he is being lionized. Absolutely glorified. I suppose one such movie was this Kabir Singh recently. If the hero in the popular consciousness himself is a debauched criminal, what do you expect the general populace to be? If your role model is a lout and a scoundrel, what do you expect is going to happen to the population? And I'm not even talking of draconian or authoritarian measures where you just increase censorship to a point where you start controlling and curbing all media rather than regulating it. I'm talking of a revolution in man's consciousness. I'm talking of a situation where a movie like that is released. The censor board does not even ask for cuts. No editing is needed. Fine, you want to release that movie, go ahead and release. But I'm talking of a situation where nobody goes to watch that movie. Not that using the strong arm of the law, you prevent that movie from reaching theaters. I'm not talking of one movie, please. I have nothing against a particular script writer or producer, or we are not isolated individuals, so I can't have anything against an individual as such. It's a genre of movies that I'm talking of. So I'm talking of a situation where even if such a movie is released, and let it be released, but the public taste is elevated to a point where public finds it puke-worthy, distasteful, and the movie falls flat. Total collections over 4 weekends, not even 1 crore. That would be the real disincentive for the producer from coming up with any such similar venture in the future. After all, the final consumer of all kinds of nonsense is the individual, the common man. And that is where the change must happen. And it is not impossible. I'm not narrating some dream or utopia. It is very much doable. We want it to happen. Deep inside, each of us is craving for it. Its time has come. Not that there was any point in history when its time was not there. But I suppose as much as any other point in history, or probably more than any other point in history, right now, we need that revolution in individual consciousness. Why do we need it today much more than we ever did? Because today we are 8 billion. Because today we control more resources than we ever did. And because today we are closer to destroying the planet than we ever were. So today we need that revolution more than ever. And that's the reason I constantly keep pointing at it. We always needed it. But today, it's not even a need, a general need. It's an emergency requirement. You need it not like you need some water in general. You need it like a dying man needs medicines in ICU. These are two different levels of needs. These are two different intensities of needs. Today, entire mankind is in ICU. The entire planet is in ICU. That's the medicine we need. That's the emergency healing that we need.
But somehow, the common man, me, or everyone that I meet, people are not able to see that direct correlation, that how what I am doing in my day, what I am doing right now, is somehow resulting to that which is happening in that news headline.
And this ignorance is the reason behind a fractured and very fragmented approach to life. We do not see how my food choices are linked to crime in society. I do not see how what is on my plate is responsible for climate change. I do not see how what I wear is related to the level of crime in the area. Oh, by this, please, I'm not talking of having a dress code for women or something. That's not the direction in which I'm looking. We do not see how our political choices are responsible for crime. We do not see how everything that we do throughout the day, every little thing, including the decision to work somewhere, the decision to marry, the decision to have kids, the decision to read something, the decision to entertain oneself, the decision to travel, the decision to whatever. All these come from a common center. And if that center is not all right, then everything will be diseased. Take every individual instance of crime as a symptom of a deeper malaise. It is not the disease in itself. Are you getting it?
It's just a symptom.
It is just a symptom of something far more lethal brewing within. It can be fatal. Instead, we treat every such case separately, as if it has no connection with the general fabric of our collective mind. We totally absolve ourselves, we give ourselves the clean chit. We say it happened there, so he is responsible. He is responsible, all right, go and punish him. But he is not the only one who is responsible. The responsibility trickles down right up to the one who says that others are responsible. Quick fix measures, blood baying, demands for instant lynching and such things. They will be ineffective. That's all. I'm not saying they are ethically or morally or spiritually wrong or whatever. Suffices to say that these kinds of measures will remain ineffective. Do what you want to do. Kill all the rapists, and yet you will find 15 days down the line more cases of rape happening. Maybe if you create an environment of fear, then rape will be done in a way that it remains undisclosed. The rapist will take due care. He is afraid. You see, look at the markets. Look at how we consume. Look at what is being sold to us. You are constantly being provoked and excited. You are being kept on the boil. And one way to sell products is to use the body of woman, be it any product. Now we have a very peculiar case in India. There is a lot of materialism sans material. You have indoctrinated the common man in materialism. You have told him, educated him in many ways that the material aspect of life is everything, that you must have pleasure. You have told him that happiness is the highest goal of life. How have you done that? Through internet, through media, through television, through all kinds of social influences. Materialism, he now worships. Material he has not. He is being constantly fed the images of attractive women. Being made to pose to seduce. But those women he has not. And he cannot have them. The gender ratio is 9:20, 9:30. In the northern states, it is even less than 900 per 1,000 men. So he is being all the time kept on a hormonal boil. Even the hoarding by the wayside, let's say if you're a truck driver, even the hoarding by the wayside is displaying semi-nude women. He's always being kept on a testosteronic overdrive, the 6th gear. But where are the women? Oh, please don't construe this to mean that I mean that all truck drivers must be having women and all that. No, please. Just see what is happening. With misplaced notions of happiness and development, we are pushing materialism very, very hard. We say how good and big and growing and prosperous as a country we are depends on our material output. So how do we benchmark our country's progress? By looking at the GDP. How do we set a target for the country's betterment? Say we want X trillion GDP by this year. And we do not even realize, we are so ignorant, that if the material becomes everything, then the woman's body or the man's body or the animal's body or the child's body too will be looked at as just material. The day you start worshipping GDP, you have turned everything into material. Because it is material prosperity and abundance that you are now looking at. And it's not merely the central government that does that. The father of the girl is looking for a suitable boy, a groom. 80% of his decision depends on how much he earns. The material condition of the groom, prospective groom. How much do you earn? Do you have a government job? All right, this is how much you earn over the table. Under the table? No, just indicate to me, I'll understand. I'm an expert in catching such signals. So the entire society is rushing after the material. And you very well know the relationship between the material and the woman's body. Material is that which sells, correct? If it doesn't sell, do you call it material? Does it contribute to GDP? It doesn't. Like wasteland it is. Wasteland too is technically material. But does wasteland contribute to GDP? No. Anything that sells is material. The woman's body sells. So does the man's body if the woman has purchasing power. So we are in this business now. Selling bodies. Selling bodies. What's even more unnerving is that most of these bodies, which is the bodied people, themselves are turning them into objects of sale. Sometimes very unconsciously. They don't even know what they're doing. Look at all this beauty business. Look at the cosmetics industry. And needless to say, how much the cosmetics industry is responsible for cruelty towards animals and climate change and all those things. I don't think this is the right time to go into what the textile industry, the fashion industry, the apparels industry, and the cosmetics are doing to our ecosystem, to biodiversity, to animals, to climate change. But I must touch upon these issues as well, so that we know what the consequences of unbridled consumerism and materialism are. Do you see how all these things are interconnected? And you rightly said most people don't see that. They don't see how their choice in purchasing cosmetics is linked to a crime happening somewhere else. And the crime is not necessarily that a woman is offended or violated. Isn't the disappearance of an animal species a huge crime? Think of it. And now you would understand why, and listen carefully to this, why the rape of a woman gathers more publicity than the murder of the woman. So many women are murdered every day. Does their murder make headlines? Look at the number of homicide cases. Look at the number of women who are being murdered every day. Most people don't bat an eyelid. But rape is sensational. If it's a rape and murder case, then in Europe, it would be mentioned in the media as a murder case, as an aside, as a description, it would be mentioned that the woman was raped before being murdered. What is more important is that a human life has been lost. That is the more important and more sickening aspect. That is what should concern people. A murder has taken place. But look at what happened in India. 80% of the public outcry was because of the rape. Only 20% was because of the murder. It is rape that interests people. Are people really interested in the welfare of women? No. Look at their approach towards women. But the moment a woman gets raped, then there is a big hue and cry. That will tell you our approach towards women's sexuality and the woman's body. We don't bother for their education. We don't feel ashamed when we make our little daughters dance in reality shows to loathsome filmy songs. A woman is not allowed to work after marriage. Nobody cares. It doesn't make headlines at all. A woman has unsafe work environment. Doesn't matter. Doesn't make headlines. A woman dies during childbirth. Who bothers? Public spaces are not woman friendly. Who bothers? Women themselves are getting conditioned to look at themselves as mere bodies. Nobody cares. The number of women in higher education lags behind the number of men in universities, especially in professional education. That does not make for any sensational media report. A woman is murdered. Even that is just a 2-inch thing in some newspaper, usually a local newspaper. But if it is a sensational rape case, then the entire country joins in. Are we really concerned about women? Are we? Had we been concerned about women, how is it that the common man of this country is involved in so much of female feticide? I want to ask. One murder has taken place and the entire country is up in arms. Where are the millions of missing girls? Who murdered them? And why didn't people talk of them? People didn't talk of them because it was the people who murdered those girls. But they did that murder in the safety and sanctity of their homes. So it didn't make to the media. I'm again asking, just calculate the number of girls who are not allowed to take birth every year. Then bring that number down to a per day digit. How many girls are being killed per day by this common man of the country? What right does he have to shout on the streets and remonstrate and ask for blood? Is it not so that we the people are ourselves responsible? And we find an easy scapegoat in some petty criminal. We hang him and satisfy our bloodthirsty conscience.
But now this makes me question one thing, that the fourth way that we were talking of, from where is it coming? Because, okay, a very obvious answer in people's head would be, it is, okay, so when we say fourth way, we are talking of spirituality. But when I look at the pop spirituality of today's age, it's not about this. It's not about looking at what you are doing point to point in your entire day, looking at the repercussions of that in the world, what kind of influences you are casting on somebody's head. So I won't call it spirituality in today's terms that we use. Where exactly it is coming from, what it is.
Spirituality has become a very loaded word, loaded with abuse. So I would prefer to just call it individual honesty. And that, I suppose, is not too much to ask for. That which is called continuous remembrance or self-observation in spirituality is actually, in day-to-day language, just basic honesty. Ignorance is not really absence of knowledge. Ignorance is absence of honesty. Knowledge is never far away. I'm talking of self-knowledge. If we are talking of self-knowledge, then how can self-knowledge be far away? You just have to look at yourself. Correct? What is it that you are doing and what's going on? What's going on within you, in your thoughts, in your actions, in your intentions. So knowledge is not a problem. The problem lies with the intention. Do we really want to know, or are we taking pleasure in our drowsiness, dreams, stupor, deep sleep or half sleep? It is that honesty that I seek to address. It is that honesty that I seek to invoke. What else can be done? One does not really need to be taught too much. The so-called spiritual knowledge is no big deal. One wisdom text is sufficient if one has the intention to live by the truth. It is that intention that is lacking. Do we even want to be all right? Superficially, yes. And because you say superficially, even if superficially you say that you want to be all right, so I speak to you. And then I remind you of your own stated intention. I tell you, you came to me saying that you want to be all right. If you want to be all right, as per your own words, then kindly look at how you are conducting yourself in your family, how you are planning your life, how you are living day to day, what your relationship with the environment is, what your relationship with your wife and kids are, how do you relate to your parents, to what use do you put your money. If we want our welfare, if we want any kind of betterment, we will have to seriously consider these questions. We will have to find space to look at these things. Otherwise, we will just remain stupid sloganeers after every next diabolic incidence of rape or murder or deception or whatever. Nobody else, you see, can come and help in this matter. It's our life. And we want it to be the best it can be, right? So we must sit down, we must think. We must apply ourselves to these issues. We can't just leap up and start shouting and then again retreat to our passivity. We can't have these episodic explosions in the general consciousness and hope to get something lasting out of them. Start with yourself, start with your friend circle, start with your family. First of all, learn to be in solitude, learn to seriously look at yourself. Then discuss it with those who are around you. See whether the stuff that you have, the stuff that you do, the stuff that you think about is necessary. See what is redundant and see what is missing. Avoid self-deception. You can't be forced to avoid self-deception. One can maybe entreat, maybe plead. That's the fourth way. Doesn't sound very glamorous, does it? You look a bit disappointed.
I was rather pondering over the second word that we had in the title, but rather on the other thing, that maybe this is the right justice that we can do to ourselves.
Justice. The right state of things. Justice is not revenge. Justice has to do with justness. Justness has to do with rightness. The right state of things is justice. Justice can't really be delivered in a courtroom. Of course, the courts do deal with justice, but that's pretty much superficial. Real justice can happen only when you are just to yourself. Do justice to your own life. And then you will probably see that you have a just society where there is very little exploitation or subjugation of the disempowered sections. all the nice things will then happen on their own. If you can have a fundamental shift at the level of individual consciousness. I don't know how it sounds to you. Obviously, it is not very compelling. But then, do you have an option? Is there something else that you want to try out? Obviously, you can repeat our age-old tricks. But if you repeat those methods, you will also repeat what you have so far obtained from these methods.
So I think we have very holistically looked at the entire picture. At one hand, we have also seen the entire futility, or rather maybe the shortcomings of the first three ways. And parallelly, we have also seen what the fourth way has to offer. And the best thing about it is that it is something which is very doable because it starts with me.
You don't have to depend on somebody else to take the lead. You don't have to depend on favorable circumstances or institutional support. And that is why it is so scary. Because if you don't have to depend on somebody else, then you have nobody else to blame. Because it starts with you. Hence, it becomes very undoable. And it also becomes eminently doable. All depends on your intention. I request, I plead, in your own self-interest, please be intended rightly.
That's all from my side, Acharya ji. Thanks a lot.